Bob Denver, the popular star of Gilligan's Island, used to make millions of people laugh. In the background, though, his life took a dark and strange turn. His once bustling home is now empty, a scary reminder of his fame and sadness. Not many people know the true story of his loving wife, his children, and the sad ending that puts an end to the funny legend. Beyond what was shown on Sunny Island, what was left behind tells a much darker story. Are you ready to hear his story? Let's begin the movie. People all over the world knew him as Bob Denver. He was a famous American singer, songwriter, actor, and humanitarian whose legacy has lasted for decades. Denver made a lot of people happy and inspired them with his words and love for nature. Behind the scenes, though, he was having a lot of health problems. Many of them were caused by smoking, which he had done for a long time and never quite quit. Bob Denver smoked a lot for most of his adult life. Denver had a strong nicotine addiction, even though he was known as a clean, living, environmentally conscious person who was often linked to the natural beauty of the Rocky Mountains. His work was marked by his constant smoking. Like many people his age, he started smoking at a time when the health risks were not fully understood or widely known. Denver found it hard to quit, even as the risks became clearer. It was a sad irony for a man who sang a lot about how healthy and pure nature is. After years of smoking, it finally caught up with them. Denver's health started to get much worse in the early 2000s. People who smoke for a long time often get throat cancer, which is what he was identified with. The disease hurt his vocal cords a lot. They were the parts of his voice that made him famous. Denver's diagnosis was a terrible blow to him and to his fans all over the world, who loved how his voice sounded in classic songs like Take Me Home, Country Roads, Annie's Song, and Rocky Mountain High. Denver got a lot of care for his cancer, which included surgery to remove cancerous tissue from his throat. Specifics about when he was diagnosed with cancer stayed secret, but it is known that he was getting a lot of medical care during this time. Besides surgery, he also had radiation and maybe chemotherapy, which are common ways to treat cancer but can have very bad side effects, especially in older patients. In 2005, Bob Denver's health problems got worse. He had heart bypass surgery that same year, which showed that in addition to his battle with cancer, he was also having major heart problems, which is another problem that can happen after smoking for a long time. People can get coronary artery disease slowly over time, and Denver's smoking probably played a clear role in his getting it. The surgery was very important, and while it worked in the short run, it made him weaker as he continued to fight throat cancer. Bob Denver died at the Wake Forest University Baptist Medical Center in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, on September 2, 2005. He was 70 years old. Several problems happened after his surgery for cancer that led to his death. One of the worst was pneumonia, a major lung infection that can be especially dangerous for people whose immune systems or lungs are already weak, which was the case in Denver at that time. A common problem that can happen after surgery is pneumonia, especially in older people and people who have had surgery on their chest or throat. When Denver died, a life that had touched many people came to an end. Even though his death was quiet and out of the public eye, fans were still moved by the news and remembered not only his music, but also the man who wrote it. Even though his voice was silenced, his impact lived on. There were many relationships and marriages in Bob Denver's personal life, which showed both the good and bad parts of his life outside of fame. Denver got married 4 times during his career. Each marriage changed his home life and, to some extent, how people saw him in public. Bob Denver had a son and a daughter with his first wife, though there aren't many public records that talk about this first marriage, including who his first wife was. This early part of his family life set the stage for his role as a father, which he played his whole life, even though he had a well-known job. After this first marriage, Denver got married to Jean Weber in 1967. His marriage ended in 1970, which was a pretty short time in his life. During these years, Jean Weber was in Denver at the same time that Denver's music business was just starting to take off. He went from being a local folk singer to a nationally known artist. Even though their marriage was important, it ended just as Denver's career was picking up speed. Denver got married to Carol Abrahams in 1972. They had a child together, and they were together during some of his most important years as a musician and public figure. They were married until 1975. Denver had a girl named Emily while they were together. While he was dating Carol, Denver was having some of his biggest hits and getting a lot of attention. Still, it ended in divorce just like his other marriages. Denver probably had a hard time keeping these early marriages together because of the pressures of fame and personal problems. Denver's last marriage was to Dreama Perry, and they were together until Perry's death in 1997. Drea was more than just a wife. She was his partner and was there for him through the good and bad times in his health and work. They had a son named Colin together. Compared to his previous relationships, this one was more stable and committed. And Dreama stayed by his side throughout his last years, including when he was fighting cancer and having other health problems. In addition to his family life, Denver's personal life had some controversial parts, especially when he got in trouble with the state for having marijuana. Denver was caught in Anderson, California on February 7, 1971, after police found drugs and drug paraphernalia in his car. Most states did not allow marijuana at that time, and possession charges were taken very seriously. Denver said no contest to the charges, which meant his sentence was cut down to $150 fine. In the early 1970s, when attitudes toward drug use were changing but laws were still strict, this event showed how unstable culture was at the time. In 1998, almost 30 years later, Denver had to deal with another legal problem related to marijuana. Police found marijuana that had been sent to his house, which led to a probe. At first, Denver said that the package had come from Dawn Wells, the actress known for her role as Marianne on the TV show Gilligan's Island. There was a lot of talk and speculation about this story in the media, but Denver later refused to name Wells in court. Instead, he said that it must have been sent by a crazy fan, separating Wells from the event. Denver said no contest again, and this time he got 6 months of probation. As this episode showed, Denver's relationship with marijuana is still very complicated. Many people thought he used it to treat his health problems. Denver's public image as a singer and environmental activist was not affected by these run-ins with the law. Instead, they showed a more human side of the star, one who was willing to challenge the law and the social norms of his time. They also showed bigger changes in American culture about drug use, especially among artists and famous people. Let's talk about Bob Denver's home now. At the height of his fame as the likable Gilligan from the hit TV show Gilligan's Island in the mid-1960s, Bob Denver made a big personal investment that showed both his growing stardom and his desire for peace in the busy world of Hollywood. He bought a big house with a view of the peaceful Tanga Canyon. The house is close to the beaches and lifestyle appeal of Malibu, California. There was more to this house than just a place to live. It was a safe place for Denver to get away from the demands and stresses of fame, and a key part of keeping him grounded during one of the busiest times in his career. Topanga Canyon, which is in the Santa Monica Mountains, has long been known as a place where artists, singers, and actors can get away from the busyness of Los Angeles. The rolling hills, groups of old oak trees, and rough terrain of the area's natural beauty gave Bob Denver a peaceful break from the busy movie sets and crowded city life. The home he owned was on about 2 acres of land that was mostly made up of oak trees, which added to its remote, almost rural feel. This large plot gave people solitude and a real connection with nature. A nice break for Denver. Denver's home in Topanga Canyon was carefully placed in a great spot. Studio City, where Gilligan's Island was shot, was only a 35-minute drive away. This made it easy to get to work while still being physically and mentally separate from it. This balance was very important for Denver, especially since the show had a very busy schedule. The cast and crew of Gilligan's Island had a lot of work to do during the show's 3-year run. Bob Denver knew he only had 1 day off a week most of the time. Having a quiet place to go where he could recharge and keep his sense of self was essential in such a stressful environment. As Bob Denver put it, his house was a spot where he could really relax and enjoy the outdoors. The peaceful setting made it possible to see wildlife up close. He often talked about seeing hawks flying over the land, which stood for the peace and freedom he sought outside of acting. His home was quiet and free of the usual city noise, unlike Los Angeles, which is a very busy city. There are no loud cars or crowded streets. There are only the sounds of nature and the leaves rustling in the wind. For Denver, this environment was especially important. He loved these times when he wasn't in the spotlight. Denver was honest when he said that the house needed a lot of work after he bought it. The exact price that Denver paid for the house was never made public, but he was honest about how hard it was for him to manage his money. Performing arts brought him money, but he wasn't too focused on getting rich. He instead focused on living a simple, honest life, making the property into a real sanctuary that fit his personality and lifestyle needs required a lot of money to be spent on renovations. With this hands-on approach to fixing up the house, Denver could also do something real and satisfying outside of the entertainment business. Bob Denver's ownership of this Tanga Canyon home during the height of his Hollywood career was important to him in many ways. In terms of his career, it kept him close to the studios and the heart of his fame. He liked it because it was a quiet place where he could get away from the stresses of public life and feel somewhat normal. This balance helped Denver deal with the problems that came with becoming famous all of a sudden, while keeping his mental and emotional health in good shape. The home's remote location and natural beauty meant a lot to them after the busy schedule of making Gilligan's Island. The show's popularity made Denver famous all over the world, but it also made her work very hard, both mentally and physically. Being able to go to a quiet place to relax after long days of shooting was very helpful. Denver often talked about how much he respected these alone times and his connection with nature as a way to stay grounded in the chaos of fame in interviews. The part of Bob Denver's life that has to do with the small town of Bovina, New York, stands out as an interesting and mysterious thread. Denver was best known for his iconic part as Gilligan on the hit TV show Gilligan's Island, but in his personal life he liked to get away from the excitement and glamour of Hollywood. His home in Bovina, a small, close-knit town in Delaware County in the Catskill Mountains area of upstate New York, was one of these safe places. There aren't many details about this property, but the house and its surroundings show a time in Denver's life when people wanted things to be simpler and get away from the fast-paced entertainment industry. Bovina is a typical small town in the country, with rolling hills, farms, and a close-knit community feel. Bovina had a very different pace of life than the big cities of Los Angeles or the beautiful but busy areas around Malibu and Topanga Canyon. It was quiet, casual, and very connected to nature. For someone like Bob Denver, who had spent years working in TV production and being in the public eye, this kind of setting probably felt good to the soul. This was one of his few chances to get out of the press and experience a slower, more normal way of life. The details of Denver's Bovina home are hard to find in records or first-hand accounts. The property's size, architectural style, or specific features are still mostly unknown, which may be a sign of how modestly Denver approached this part of his life. Compared to his well-known homes in California, like the large Tanga Canyon home near Malibu, this New York property seems to have been a smaller holding, more of a personal retreat than a grand estate. There isn't much information about the purchase or sale costs, which supports the idea that Denver's connection to the property was probably practical and low. Rather than a big investment for money or status. Even though there aren't many details, the home's rural location alone tells us a lot about Denver's personal goals in the 1970s. He was going through a change in his career at the time. The TV roles that made him famous were coming to an end, and new chances were coming up all over the place. It's possible that buying a house in Bovina was an effort to find balance, security, and peace during this uncertain time. Denver probably got some good ideas and a chance to relax away from the attention of the public while living in the country and being close to a community that wasn't connected to Hollywood. One of the brightest and people in Bovina still talk about the times Denver went to Russell's store, which was the town's general store and the center of daily life for the people who lived there. Local legend has it that Denver would sometimes walk into the store with a monkey casually sitting on his shoulder. This strange image perfectly captures his quirky charm and playful spirit. This strange companion was probably one of Denver's pets or an animal friend he had grown close to. He brought a bit of the strange to the small town by being there. These kinds of stories show how Denver's personality and fame made even a quiet rural area stand out in a way that people would remember. The mix of normalcy and humor that made up a lot of Denver's private life is also shown by this story. His work brought him a lot of fame, but these private moments in Bovina showed a man who enjoyed simple pleasures and had a sense of humor that made friends, neighbors, and fans love him. This mix of normal life and the unexpected is part of the reason why Denver has become such a beloved culture figure over the years. In the last few years of his life, Bob Denver found peace, meaning, and love for his family in Princeton, West Virginia. He moved to this peaceful Appalachian town with his fourth wife, Drea Perry Denver. They did this because they wanted to be closer to their autistic son, Colin. During this time in Denver's life, he made a big change from the fast-paced life of Hollywood fame to a more private life based on family, community, and service. Princeton, a small city surrounded by green hills, was the perfect place for Bob Denver to find peace and quiet after years of being in the public eye. Their Princeton home was not only a place to live, but also a safe place where Denver could reflect on his changing goals and values as he got older. This cute and cozy house had the perfect mix of modern conveniences and cozy country charm, just like the peaceful nature that was all around it. The house's design mixed clean, modern lines with elements that made it look like a cozy mountain cabin. Natural wood siding and stone accents on the outside made the house blend in with the landscape, and large windows let in views of West Virginia's green hills and forests. Inside, the design continued this mix of styles with a warm color scheme mostly made up of earthy tones, soft browns, muted greens, and deep reds that made the space feel warm and welcoming. A lot of the old furniture was Denver's own collection that he had gathered over the years. It gave the room personality and a sense of history. There were mementos and souvenirs that praised his career and interests, which reminded people of the man behind the beloved TV character without taking away from the peaceful atmosphere of the home. The Denver family's way of life was taken into account when the interior spaces were planned. A gourmet kitchen with new tools and lots of counter space was the main attraction. It showed Drea's love of cooking and the couple's love of having people over. The sitting rooms were big but cozy, making them perfect for getting together with friends or family, reading quietly, or taking some time to think. The open floor plan and many bedrooms gave family members and guests space while still making the house feel like a community. Small personal touches, like framed photos and carefully chosen decorations, showed how warm and friendly the Denver family was all over the house. One thing that made Bob and Drea's life in Princeton unique was how much they cared about their neighbors. They got very active in the community and ran WGAG LP 93, 1FM, a nonprofit radio station that served the area. This place wasn't just a fun thing to do. It brought people together in the community by providing local news, music, and shows that were relevant to the tastes and beliefs of people in Princeton. Through WGAGLP, the Denvers built community and a sense of belonging, which helped make their new hometown more culturally rich. Beyond the radio station, the Denver's charitable attitude was shown through the Denver Foundation, a group they set up to help children, veterans, and families with special needs. This foundation was a reflection of their personal experiences and their desire to help others, especially those going through problems like the ones their son Colin did. The Denver Foundation wanted to make a real difference in the lives of vulnerable people in and outside of their community by reaching out to them, speaking out for them, and giving them money. People all over the country knew Bob Denver from his TV parts, especially as Gilligan. When he first moved to Princeton, fans were curious and would sometimes drive by the family home to try to catch a glimpse of the famous actor. But as time went on, Denver became more than just a star to the people in the area. People saw him as a neighbor, a friend, and a man who cared about his family and his new house. This acceptance showed how down to earth Denver was and how hard he really wanted to make connections in the place he now called home. Living in this house until he died in 2005, Bob Denver's Princeton home showed what he valued in his later years. In this case, the joys and duties of family life were more important than the trappings of fame. Denver's search for simplicity, connection, and purpose outside of the spotlight was reflected in the house's quiet location, warm design, and activities that brought people together. Still, when the famous TV show Gilligan's Island ended its run in 1967, Bob Denver was at a major turning point in his personal and professional life. The years before the end of the show had been very busy and hard. Almost every day for 3 years, he worked hard to film episodes that had strict plans, often with only one day off each week. He became famous all over the country for playing Gilligan, but the constant attention and stress of working in the entertainment business got to him. Lake Sherwood, a peaceful lakeside retreat in the hills north of Malibu, was the place Denver chose to relax and fully recharge. Many people who wanted to get away from the constant noise and chaos of Los Angeles went to Lake Sherwood, which was known for its beautiful scenery and quiet atmosphere. The lake was just over the mountains from Malibu, making it easy to get to while still being private. It was about a 30-minute drive from the major studio lots where a lot of Denver's work had been filmed. It was close enough for him to stay connected to his career while still far enough away to provide a safe space. Denver's house on Lake Sherwood was more than just a house. It was his safe place, a spot where he could break down after years of working nonstop. Although there aren't many specifics in public records about the house's size or style, what we know about it from Denver's own thoughts and the stories of people close to him is enough. It was a quiet place in the middle of nature, and the still waters of the lake made his daily life feel better. The setting was just what he needed during this time of change as he dealt with the unknowns of life after a big TV role that had defined his career. One thing that Denver loved most about his time at Lake Sherwood was how much he valued the sense of community that surrounded the lake. Denver didn't want to be alone, so he found happiness in the small things that made life nice in this lakeside town. He was known to spend time watching businessmen in the area row on the calm surface of the lake. Their steady strokes created a quiet beat that went well with the lake's calm atmosphere. The rural charm was enhanced by children playing in the nearby marshes and along the shore. The natural simplicity of the setting was both lively and relaxing. This mix of natural beauty and human activity made Denver feel like he belonged, which was very different from the celebrity culture he had left behind. Denver bought a 14-foot sailboat with a cabin, which may be the most unique and special thing about his Lake Sherwood property. It's said to be the only boat on the lake of its kind. This simple sailboat came to represent Denver's increased freedom and leisure. He could relax both physically and emotionally by sailing. He could drift across the water on his own, away from the stresses of show business. The house on the boat was a cozy place to stay on day trips, so he could spend hours on the water no matter what the weather was like. Sailing wasn't just a hobby for these people. Denver really needed to be alone, think, and be in touch with nature, and this fulfilled those needs. The lakeside house and sailboat that went with it were a reflection of Denver's way of life at the time. He longed for an easier life where he could enjoy nature's rhythms, watch life quietly, and enjoy simple recreation. He had become famous at a young age and had to deal with the demanding demands of Hollywood. He wrote about how much he enjoyed watching everyday life happen around the lake and how happy he was when he was sailing. These simple times of peace and normalcy were important to him. The financial details of the Lake Sherwood property aren't well known, like how much it cost to buy or how much it cost to fix up. But it's clear that the investment was more than just money. It was an investment in Denver's mental and emotional health. It was a place away from the public eye where he could get his balance back. In many ways, this lakeside retreat was a real life example of a turning point. It was a break between his years of fast-paced fame on TV and the slower, more deliberate parts of his later career. How do you feel about Bob Denver? Please tell us what you think in the box below. We hope this video was helpful for you. Kindly click like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoy the video, glad you watched and see you in the next film. Thank you.